I want to talk to you today about a project that you're going to work on for the next couple of days related to conic sections. So you're going to create a piece of art using conic sections and some other simple equations like lines. You will turn in a completed drawing, including coloring it, and a list of all your equations and some information to go with that. So the bare minimum that your project must include is a picture that includes at least 6 equations that have circles, ellipses, and hyperbolas used correctly. The equations must be written on a separate sheet of paper, and among these 6 equations you have to have at least one circle, and with that circle you're going to identify the center and the radius, at least one ellipse, and for that you're going to identify the center, the vertices, the co-vertices, and the foci, and a hyperbola, and for that you're going to identify the center, the vertices, and the foci. In addition to that, in addition to identifying the equations, your graph art project is going to have a title and you're going to color it nicely. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of examples so you can get an idea of what we're looking at, and then I'll go through the rubric more with you. Here are a couple examples of ones people have done before, and I think the hyperbola is the most difficult part here, so I'm going to highlight that on each of these. So this is a flower. I think you've got a circle in the center, you've got an ellipse going left and right and up and down, and then this portion right here is a hyperbola, really far apart hyperbola. Okay, and they also used a line to make the stem. And then there were some extra pieces that they didn't write the equations of. These sideways ovals, we don't know how to do that yet, so they just added those to the picture. So it's okay to have other parts of your graph that we don't have equations for. But she had 4 hyperbolas, a circle, 4 ellipses, a circle, a hyperbola, and some lines. Okay. Here's an example. This is a monkey. I think we've got lines for arms and legs. We've got definitely an ellipse on the outside and an ellipse or a circle for the head. And I think the hyperbola here is the 2 bananas. Okay, so it's really spread out. We've got a Minnie Mouse. I believe Minnie Mouse's hyperbola, let me see if I can remember where that would be. We've definitely got ellipses here, circle. I'm not sure where the hyperbola is here. Okay. Then we've got a car. I believe the hyperbola here is the door handles, some circles, and parts of ellipses. So I don't think there's a full ellipse here, but you can restrict your domain and just draw part of it. Popcorn, we got I think this is our hyperbola, the sides of this. So obviously it doesn't keep going forever. They restricted it to only be here, and they stuck these lines in here. And then I think we got a bunch of circles in the letters. I'm not sure about an ellipse here. They might not have an ellipse. And we have a minion. I believe the hyperbola here is these straps. They really restricted it, so we're only looking at a little part of it. This one's probably a little more simple, but definitely has all the information. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circles, an ellipse, and then the side of the wings are a hyperbola. Again, they restricted them to not go on forever, and that's what I want you to do. And a snowman. We got circles for bodies. I believe the hyperbola here is the mouth and the bottom. And Winnie the Pooh, here's the hyperbola. It's the neckline of his shirt. All right, I want to sort of take you through the process of what I would be thinking and what I would be doing before I actually get out a piece of graph paper and start putting down official things. So the first thing I would do is think about what sort of shape you want. And I decided I wanted sort of a summer picture. And then I had to think about how I could use hyperbola. So a hyperbola is going to look something like this, or maybe it could be a little bit more flat. So I decided those would be great palm trees. I could have 2 palm trees, and I'll have to work on the picture part there. And then I could have a hammock in the middle, and maybe I could have a sun, and maybe I could have a beach ball and some other things that might be circles. I'm not so concerned about getting some circles in my pictures, but the hyperbola is going to be kind of difficult. So I suggest you sketch an idea and then sort of plot it on a piece of regular paper. Sorry, I'm trying to hold the camera and do this. So I think what I want is I want a hyperbola, and I would really like to center it on the X or Y axis. So I'm going to try and make the center right there, and then I'm going to have it curve there and equally there. So that means I'm going to have to restrict the domain or the range up and down, but that's okay. So then I also want to have a hammock. So I'm going to have an ellipse there. I'll go ahead and put the palm leaves in without any equations. I don't think I'm going to write equations for those. I'm going to have a circle up here that's going to be the sun. I might write equations of those lines, or I might not. And then maybe underneath the hammock, I'm going to have a beach ball. I don't know, some other things that aren't. That's a pail. Some other things that aren't conic sections. And I could think about maybe I could have a surfboard over here that is an ellipse. Maybe I'll have a whole line of them. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I've got at least one of each thing. So I've got an ellipse, I've got a hyperbola, and I've got a circle. And then make sure I have 6 total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So right now I've got 7 conic sections. So that feels pretty good to me. Then I would suggest getting a piece of graph paper. There's regular graph paper, or there's this graph paper that already has numbers on it. And start to think about, okay, I want the center of my hyperbola to be right here. I want them to be spread out. So I want the vertices to be at least 6 apart. And then maybe I'm going to get my pencil instead of my pen, and I'm going to draw that box that we normally do so that I can think about the asymptotes. So maybe it goes over 6 and up 3. Now all of this I would be doing with a pencil, so I could then erase it. So I'm going to draw those asymptotes in. Oops, sorry. And now I'm going to draw my hyperbola in. And all I know about the hyperbola is that it curves towards that asymptote. So maybe I'm just going to curve it to there and to there. I'm going to try and make it even on the other side. Okay, so those are going to be the sides of my palm trees. I'm probably going to freehand the rest of the palm tree, but I need to make sure I have that. So now I'm going to write an equation. The center's at 0, 0. The x direction is 6. The y direction is 3. It opens side to side, so it's going to be x squared minus y squared. We said the x direction was 6, so 6 squared is 36. Y direction is 3. 3 squared is 9, equals 1. So once I have that equation, I'm going to work on finding the center, the vertices, the asymptotes, and the foci for my official paperwork. But now I can go back in and say, okay, I want an ellipse. It's going to be in this shape, and I can keep writing all my equations. So I would have a scrap sheet of paper where I sort of plan it out. And I'd have another sheet of paper where I start to graph it, erase the parts I don't need. Then once I have officially where all my dots need to go, then I can go and make a final graph that I will then color. All right, now I want to talk about the rubric for a second. The bare minimum is that you use at least 4 equations correctly in your picture. Okay, then I'm going to go through. You have to use at least one circle, at least one ellipse, and at least one hyperbola. So I'm going to look at one of your circles and make sure that you have an equation that matches what you actually graphed and all the defining characteristics that you were supposed to identify, which for a circle would be the center and the radius, are correct. Okay, an ellipse, I'm going to go through that, make sure all of those are correct. Hyperbola, make sure everything you're supposed to identify there. You have to have one of each of these for full credit. And then you're supposed to have at least 6 total, so that would leave 3 more. But you might have a whole lot more. And so if I'm looking at what kind of mistakes do you have, okay, your graph, your picture needs to have a title that corresponds to your image. It doesn't have to be super exciting, but it does need a title, and you need to color it, okay? Then some of you are going to choose to do more than 6 equations because you can get some bonus points. So if you just do 2 more, you get a bonus point. From 9 to 12 equations total, 2 points. 11 to 13, 3 points. 14 or more, 4 total points. Okay? When you turn this in, I'm going to be looking for an image that is colored, a separate page that has all of your equations and information, and this rubric. If you don't turn in all 3 of those separately, you will not get as good of a grade. Okay, and I'll talk about the due date in just a second. Your equation sheet it can be regular lined paper, but for each equation, I want you to write the equation. I want you to tell me whether it's a circle, a hyperbola, or an ellipse. And then identify the defining characteristics. And it tells you up here for a circle, this is what you have to have, an ellipse, what you have to have, a hyperbola, what you have to have. Okay. After the 3 that you have to have, all I need is what type of conic section it is and what the equation is. You don't have to identify center, radius, foci, all that stuff. Okay. And so I would have that for all of my equations. This project is due by Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. You are going to have time today in class to work on this, and some time tomorrow and Thursday to work in class as well on this. Tomorrow and Thursday you also have a review packet that needs to be done by the end of Thursday for your test on Friday. So you will have until Friday morning. I would suggest trying to get it done and turn it in during class today or tomorrow. But if you need some more time, it will be due Friday morning before you take your finals. Okay, you can bring it in and set it on the desk. Just make sure that your name is on it. And I need all 3 things. So your image that's colored, your separate page with equations, and this rubric. Okay, if you have more questions, let Ms. Myers know. Talk to each other. See if you can figure it out. And good luck. I hope I have some beautiful pictures.